Some places don't just remember their past, they relive it. I didn't believe in hauntings. Not until I saw what still moves inside an empty house. 3 homes, 3 nights, and 3 things I'll never forget. I recorded every detail, but even now, I can't tell which part of these stories actually ended. If you think you can handle it, listen till the end. Because the real horror isn't what you see. It's what waits when the lights go out. Story number 1. The house on Gannett Row. I'm a 29-year-old radiographer from Leeds. Last winter, I took a 3-month placement at a small coastal hospital in North Yorkshire and rented a modest terrace on Gannett Row. 2 bedrooms, low beams, a fake coal fire. The listing only warned, access to loft is restricted. Quaint, I thought. A brass door chime hung in the lounge. Every time the front door moved, a tiny hammer tapped the bell. The host had taped a note. House settles in high winds. Chime may sound from drafts. First night, at 2:15 a.m., I woke to a single, precise ting. The door was bolted, the chain on. Still, my skin prickled like someone had tested the latch from the other side. By midweek, the pattern fixed. I'd get home late from A&E. The house would hum with old electrics, and around 2:14 to 2:17, the bell would tap once, sometimes twice, evenly spaced. Above the landing sat a loft hatch with a paint-clogged brass screw. I caught myself staring up at it as if it were listening. My neighbor Len, flat cap, polite dog, said all the terraces once had a nursery bell. A pull-up stairs that rang a bell downstairs. Bits of it remain, he shrugged. Houses remember tricks? That should have comforted me. It didn't. The back bedroom door never quite latched. One afternoon, I noticed pencil marks near the skirting. Small height ticks labeled Ava 3, Ava 4. No children's things in any cupboard. No mention in the laminated welcome sheet. Just a name the house had kept. The host messaged, cheerful and repetitive. Please keep internal doors latched overnight, reduces drafts. The insistence felt like code for something else. I latched every door, slid the key under my pillow, and tried to sleep. At 2:15, the bell tapped, the way a metronome clicks when you've set it and forgotten. Curiosity won. I bought a cheap Wi-Fi sensor for the front door. No alerts when the bell chimed. Wind then. Except one night from the hall, I heard the faintest brush of fabric from the far side of the wood, like someone standing too close. A padded envelope appeared one morning just inside my door. An old beige baby monitor and a note in block letters. If you're hearing things, this helps. Put the transmitter in the back bedroom. From a neighbor, Len swore it wasn't him. Don't use it, he said softly. If a house gives you a rhythm, don't amplify it. I plugged it in anyway. The transmitter sat by Ava's height marks. The receiver glowed on the lounge mantel. At 2:14, the bell tapped. And then, through the hiss, breathing, quick, childlike, with a tiny whistle. It moved nearer the transmitter, retreated, then came right up to the grill and exhaled. Stop, I whispered. It stopped, obediently. That chilled me more than any voice. I stood under the loft hatch with a step stool, thumb unscrewed the brass screw, and eased the hatch. Cold air fell. In my phone's torch beam, a porcelain bell pull hung from a joist. A white handle rubbed with some old flower design. Its cord disappeared into the frame, not down toward the lounge like Len had said. When I checked again later, small, clean ovals, child-sized fingerprints, traced the dusty paint around the hatch. The next day, an electrician arrived, sent by the host to check a breaker box in the loft. He peered around and frowned. No box up here. He mentioned a pull that used to be for charm, then left quickly, puzzled. After he'd gone, the pull was still there, but the rope now sank straight into the hatch, swallowed by the house. Late in my second month, a boy named Noah came into A&E with a scalp split from the harbor wall. While I steadied him for imaging, his mother joked their own house was full of bits that won't settle: doors, taps, old bells. The phrase clung to me. Dusk. I turned onto Gannett Row. Len watched my upstairs window. "You've someone in," he said. A light moved behind the back bedroom curtain like a torch swing. I tried to say I'd left a lamp on. Len poured me tea and slid over a photocopied clipping. Gannett Row Incident, 1994. Words jumped. Family left quickly. Nursery bell system. Search unsuccessful. Rented to hospital staff thereafter. A child was mentioned only as A. Marsh, 5. Not Ava, but close enough for the hair to rise on my arms. I went home. The lamp in the back room was on, though its plug lay slack. The baby monitor receiver, last seen in a drawer, sat on the bedside table, its little green light steady. I switched the lamp off. The darkness folded like heavy cloth. On the landing carpet lay the brass screw, set down neatly as if by small, careful fingers. I booked a hotel, packed with shaking hands, and left the key in the safe. As I shut the door, the bell gave a tidy, polite tap. A farewell. I slept one night away. Guilt or gravity drew me back by day to collect the rest. In the back room, with no power to the device, the receiver hissed a soft snowfall. Under it, a hesitant two-note lullaby sounded, someone testing a melody they only half remembered. Then a small voice shape, not words, only the mouth pattern of a name said too many times. Maybe Ava. Maybe whatever A. Marsh once answered to. "I'm not the person you want," I said carefully. The tune tried again, broke, fell silent. I turned the receiver off. The hiss continued from nowhere. Downstairs, the hammer above the lounge door had been wedged with folded paper. My booking printout, torn into a tidy square, just as the host once suggested. I left. The hospital moved me into a staff flat that smelled of vending machine coffee and safety. The host refunded the remaining nights and repeated his line like a charm. "Do keep those internal doors latched overnight." I didn't leave a review. How do you star rate a habit in time? Next week, a white van sat outside the terrace. Fresh linens went in. I watched a cleaner laugh when the bell tapped, then wedged the hammer with a leaflet like she'd done it before. Upstairs, the curtain's weave made ticks that looked, for a blink, like height marks. I kept one thing I shouldn't have, the porcelain pull. I don't know how it ended up in my rucksack. It lives wrapped in kitchen roll in a drawer. On sleepless nights, I hold it. It is always cold, and if I warm it long enough, it seems to soften, as if answering a hand it remembers. Back in Leeds, I sometimes wake at 2:15 to a city hum, neon, taxis, distant bass, and listen for a single tap that never comes. Relief and regret arrive together. If you ever rent on Gannett Row, latch your internal doors. If the bell taps at 1:15, don't ask, "Who's there?" That's an invitation. Say softly, "I hope you're asleep." Then listen to the silence. You'll know by its shape whether the house means to be kind. Story number 2. The guest book at Stag Cottage. I'm a 33-year-old paramedic from Manchester. 3 months ago, I booked a week off after a string of 12-hour shifts that left me feeling half awake and half alive. I didn't want crowds, or noise, or company. Just weather, silence, and a roof that creaked for honest reasons. That's how I found Stag Cottage, a small rental tucked outside Killarney, Ireland. The listing showed a single-story stone house with a peat stove, low wooden beams, and a window seat that looked out over an empty field. The description promised, quiet, private, perfect for writing or resting. The host, Maeve, sent one simple message. Key under the stone hair. Please don't move it. Heavier than it looks, I smiled at the phrasing, polite but oddly protective. I had no idea how much that line would stay with me. Arrival. The drive there wound through narrow-hedged roads. Rain hovered like breath on glass. When I reached the gate with the hand-painted stag, the evening light was fading fast. The cottage sat hunched under a chestnut tree, as if trying to stay unnoticed. The stone hair was exactly where Maeve said. A weathered carving crouched by the step, its eyes half eroded but still alert. I lifted it, found the brass key underneath, and pushed the door open. Inside smelled of turf smoke, lavender, and old wood. Everything felt tidy yet lived in, the kind of space that seems to hold its breath when someone new enters. On the small oak table sat a black-spined notebook, gold letters pressed into its cover. Guest book. I flipped it open, expecting cheerful notes about walks and weather. Most were ordinary. Lovely stay. Loved the doves in the chimney. Stormy weekend. Stove kept us warm. Then one short line written without flourish. Please close the window seat at night. That stopped me. I turned toward the window. The seat was built into the wall, a wooden chest cushioned with faded tartan facing the gray field outside. I lifted the lid. It creaked softly. Inside sat 3 objects: a long black feather, a white stone with a clean hole through its center, and a small red ribbon tied in a neat bow. They looked arranged, not random, like someone had laid them out with care. A folk charm, I thought. Ireland had plenty of those. I smiled and shut the lid. First night. That night, the rain arrived in earnest, tapping the roof like a restless finger. I fell asleep to it, soothed by the steady sound. But around 2:25 a.m., I woke to something else. A tremor. The iron latch on the window seat rattled once. Not loud, but distinct. Like someone testing it from the other side. I waited, eyes open in the dark. Nothing followed. I told myself it was wind slipping through the stonework, turned over, and eventually drifted back to sleep. The next morning, I laughed at myself for even remembering it. Second night. The second night was worse. Around the same time, 2:25 a.m., I woke again. The latch gave a dry little clink. I got up and turned on the lamp. The lid of the window seat had lifted about an inch. I froze. When I slowly raised it, the 3 objects inside were in a different order. The ribbon had shifted to the center. I hadn't touched them. I placed the firewood basket on top of the seat. Logic helps. Sometimes all you can do is make a wall out of something heavy. The guest book changes. The next morning, I went to pour coffee and noticed the guest book on the table was open. A new line had appeared in faint pencil. Latch the window seat. He comes in that way. No signature. The graphite smudged when I brushed it. Fresh. I closed the book, heart thudding in that calm, professional rhythm you get before walking into a trauma scene. I wasn't scared yet, just alert. That evening, my phone rang. Unknown Irish number. Hello? Is this the guest at Stag Cottage? A man asked. His voice was rough, older. Yes? This is Ian. Live beyond the field. Maeve gave me your number for emergencies. He hesitated, then said softly, keep the hair outside. Don't bring it in. And latch the window seat at night. Before I could ask why, he hung up. The third night. At 2:24 a.m., I woke to breath on my cheek. Warm, definite, human. The wood basket had shifted. The latch was open. The lid was up a few inches. Inside, the feather, stone, and ribbon now formed a circle. In the middle was a ripped page from the guest book. Scrawled across it, he likes when people write. I closed the seat gently and sat on it until sunrise. In the morning, I opened the guest book and wrote, in careful block letters, hello. I'll latch it. You can rest the pencil snapped halfway through the word rest. Maeve's story. Later that day, Maeve texted, "All well? If you hear the doves, it's just the cowl I typed back. All well." Lie number 1. That night, at exactly 2:23, I heard a scratch from the table. I turned on my phone torch. The guest book lay open. 2 new lines. I am under. I am still. The words pressed so deep they scored the page beneath. By morning, I'd had enough. I drove into town and found Maeve at a cafe near the roundabout. She looked younger than I expected, but her face tightened when she saw what I carried. "You found the writing," she said quietly. She told me what had happened years ago. A family had rented the cottage during a storm. Their young boy liked to hide. The power went out, the wind howled, and in the confusion, they thought he'd gone outside. They searched all night through fields and water. They found him at dawn, cold but breathing, trapped inside the window seat. He didn't make it to the hospital. Maeve's voice broke just once when she said, "Some houses remember better than people do." The final night. I returned to Stag Cottage for one last night. I don't know why. Maybe to finish the story, maybe to make peace with it. The air was still. Even the field looked tired. I opened the guest book and wrote a final note. Seat latched. Door latched. "You can rest now." I left it open on the table, then closed the seat gently and pushed the latch down until it clicked. When I locked the front door, the latch gave a soft tap behind me, like a small thank you. Aftermath. Now, months later in my flat back in Manchester, I still wake at 2:25 a.m. sometimes. The city hums around me, buses, fridges, neon hums. Yet in the quiet between, there's always a second of silence shaped like breathing. I keep telling myself it's habit, that I brought the hour home with me, not the thing. But sometimes, in the corner of my eye, I think I see a faint outline near the window. Small shoulders, head bowed, as if listening for a lullaby. If you ever stay at Stag Cottage, remember this. Don't move the stone hair. Don't open the window seat after dark. And if the latch trembles at 2:25, don't ask who's there. Just whisper, "Rest now." If the air stays still afterward, it means he listened. Story 3. The Cabin Across the Lake. I'm a 35-year-old wildlife photographer from Bristol. Last autumn, I rented a small cabin in the Scottish Highlands for a solo project. A week photographing migrating birds around Loch Darren, a remote lake surrounded by pine and mist. It was meant to be silence and solitude, the kind of peace you can only find where phone signal dies. The cabin was old but sturdy. A single room, wide window facing the water, a wood stove, and a little pier that jutted out into the loch. Across the lake, maybe half a mile away, stood another cabin, identical but abandoned. My host, a man named Gregor, mentioned it casually while handing me the key. "That one's empty." Old surveyor's hut. Don't worry if you see a light. It's just the reflection from yours. He smiled when he said it, but something in his tone didn't sit right. The first night, I arrived near dusk. Mist was crawling over the water, soft and low. The loch was so still that every sound, a twig breaking, a drop hitting the surface, seemed magnified. Inside, I lit a fire, made tea, and unpacked my gear. From the window, I could see my reflection in the glass. And faintly, the outline of that other cabin across the water. It looked darker than the trees around it, as if it swallowed light instead of reflecting it. Around midnight, I stepped outside with my camera to test long exposures. The air smelled of moss and smoke. While checking a shot, I noticed something faint. A light flickering in the window of the opposite cabin. Just a single flash, like a candle flame caught by wind. Then darkness again. I stared for a full minute, trying to convince myself it was my lantern's reflection on the lock. But the water was too still. My reflection was crisp. The other light had shimmered separately. I went back inside, locked the door, and told myself what Gregor said. It's just reflection. The second night, the next day was calm, beautiful even. I photographed swans gliding through the mist, the mountains mirrored perfectly on the surface. By evening, fog rolled in again, heavier this time. I cooked soup on the stove, wrote notes about light angles, and sat by the window. That's when I saw it. A figure. A person standing on the opposite pier facing my cabin. They didn't move, didn't wave, just stood there like a dark post against the fog. I blinked, looked again. Still there. I lifted my camera automatically. Habit. And zoomed in. Empty. No figure, just mist. My heart pounded with that sharp, irrational rush. The one that comes when you realize your senses might be playing tricks. At 2:17 a.m., I woke to a knocking sound. 3 slow knocks. Thud, 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 from the wooden wall near the back. The kind of knock that isn't asking to come in, but checking if you're still listening. I froze in bed. The fire had gone out. The air was cold. Then, faintly from across the water, came another sound. 3 echoes, the same rhythm, but delayed. Thud, thud, thud. The sound of it carried too cleanly to be real. When I looked out the window, the fog glowed faintly from within, like a lantern swinging behind it. The third night, I told Gregor the next morning. He laughed, but it was forced. Old acoustics around the loch, he said. Sound travels funny when the mist's up. And that other cabin, nobody's there. Roof's half caved in. He paused. Still, maybe don't wander too close. Water's deep, cold. That night, I decided to test him, and myself. I left my camera recording through the window on a long exposure, aimed toward the opposite shore. Then I sat near the fire and tried to read, pretending I wasn't listening. Sometime after midnight, I heard it again. Thud, thud, thud. But this time, it came from under the cabin floorboards. My breath caught. The sound wasn't loud. It was soft, like a hand pressing up against wood. Then silence. I stayed still for what felt like an hour. Eventually, I got up, heart hammering, and played the footage back from my camera. Halfway through, there was a flicker, a light across the lake, faint, moving. Then, for 3 frames, a silhouette standing in the opposite cabin window. Too sharp to be a trick of mist. When I zoomed in, the shape seemed off. The head tilted wrong, too far, like someone observing sideways. I shut the camera off and turned every lantern in the cabin on. The 4th night. By now, I hadn't slept properly in 2 days. The forest felt different, quieter, like it was holding its breath. That evening, Gregor didn't answer his phone. I left him a voicemail, half embarrassed, half desperate. Hey, I'm hearing things again. If there's anyone else staying near the loch, let me know. No reply. At 2:20, the knocking started again. Thud, thud, thud. But this time, it came from the front door. My chest went tight. I crept forward, every board groaning under my feet. The knocking stopped. Silence. Then a new sound. The soft slosh of water outside. Through the window, I saw ripples spreading from the pier, like something had climbed out of the loch. The fog was thin enough now that I could see the outline of the opposite shore. The other cabin's door was open, swinging slowly back and forth. And standing halfway across the lake, where no one should be, was a figure in the water, chest deep, facing me, still as a photograph. I wanted to shout, anything, but my throat locked. I just watched as the figure began to move forward, one slow step at a time, water rippling around it, silent. I stumbled back, knocking over a chair. My lantern flickered once and went out. When I looked again, the water was empty. The last morning I left at dawn, without packing properly. Drove until I hit signal, called Gregor and told him everything. He was quiet for a long time. Then he sighed. "You're not the first. There's no other cabin now. Hasn't been for years. It collapsed after a storm in 2009. Half of it sank into the lock." My stomach dropped. I saw it. It's still there. "No," he said, voice flat. "That's the reflection. Always looks like it's still standing when the fog's low. I drove back once, weeks later, needing proof. The pier was there, the trees, the still water. But across the lock, there was nothing. Just ripples and the faint outline of timber beams under the surface. When I lifted my camera to take a picture, the lens flickered, as if catching a flash from across the lake. One bright spark, like someone somewhere in the fog, was taking a picture of me. Epilogue. I developed the photos from that week. In one of the last frames, where the opposite cabin should have been, there's a blur of light. But in the reflection on the lock's surface, you can clearly see two cabins. Mine, and the other one. Windows lit. In the center window of that second cabin, a figure stands perfectly still. Head tilted sideways, just like in the earlier shot. I still have that photo on my computer. Every few weeks I open it, zoom in, and swear the water ripples move ever so slightly. As if someone's walking closer, step by step. I've stopped taking lake assignments now. Some reflections I've learned don't belong to you.